Hey guys, I wanted to make a video about the rapture and why I believe in a post-tribulation rapture, why I think Scripture supports a post-tribulation rapture. Most people today, they believe in some sort of rapture. Most of them believe in a pre-tribulation, though I do believe mid-trib and post-trib are growing. Mid-trib is more accurate in my opinion than pre-trib. Like I said, I believe in a post-trib. I guess it's possible for a mid-trib. I don't believe it's possible at all for a pre-trib. And I want to go through scriptures and kind of show you why and why I believe the Bible only lays out one way, that there's no really other way you can interpret it. That being said, if you do believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, a lot of people cling to this. I believe it's a false doctrine. That doesn't mean you're not saved. I just think that people, for whatever reasons, there's many different reasons. You can psychoanalyze all you want. There's people that will cling to it until they die, or until the Lord returns or the tribulation happens, or whatever. You know, whatever happens first, people will hold to this. But I do, for those of you who are willing to, look and have an open mind on this issue, and I want to show scriptures that basically lay out there's only one option. I've seen other people make videos about the post-tribulation rapture, but most of them didn't lay out scriptures right in front of your face so you could read, and I want to do that. And there's always one area, and I believe it's in Matthew, and I'll get to that in just a second, that people completely overlook when they're talking for proof of a post-tribulation rapture, or proof against a pre-trib. It is possible that there is a slim possibility in my opinion that it's a mid-tribulation, but I'm pretty sure it's a post. That it's one of these two. It can't be a pre-trib, and I'm going to show you that through scriptures. Like I said, the videos I've watched about the rapture, and this is Wikipedia. I don't know if everything they're saying here is accurate. Wikipedia's not a great source, but I basically just pulled this up to show you this picture right here, and just kind of show you the different forms of thought, even though I believe pre-tribulation isn't biblical. And like I said, if you hold to that, if you want to hold to that, I'm not going to, I'm not questioning your salvation. I just believe that it's not, you're being deceived, and it is important. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the first verse, and this is the verse, or it's verses, a chapter. There's quite a bit here that I want to talk about. And this is what a lot of people, when they're talking about the rapture, they skip over this. And this is pretty clear that shows you that there is no pre-trib rapture, and I'm going to read it. And it goes down, and it starts with the parable of the wheat and the tares. And this is Jesus speaking. He says, and this is in the a New King James Version. I don't know why it's on that one, but I'll read it in that. That's fine. All right, another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while the man slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, do you not sow good seeds in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this. The servants said to him, Do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, the master said, But he said, No, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time of the harvest, I say to the reapers, First, gather the tares and bind them in the bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And this is why I don't like to... I'm butchering reading this. This is why I don't like to read the New King James Version. I'd rather just go straight to the King James if I was going to read in this, because sometimes it reads weird. I'd rather read the King James or the New American Standard. Anyway, point is if we look at this, it says, Let them both grow together until the time of the harvest. And at that time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, First gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn. Okay, and a lot of people, they look over this because they don't know what this parable means. But this is one of the cool parables in the Bible that when you go down here, the parable of the tares explained. This is in verse 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples come to him, saying, Explain to us the parables of the tares of the field. He answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the age. The reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of the Father. Who has ears to hear, let him hear. So right here, he's saying this is at the end of the age. He's saying back here, let them both grow together until the end of the age, but you have pre-trib rapture teachers saying that no, Jesus is actually lying here. There's actually is one time where he's going to gather people up to heaven, but it's hidden. Basically, it's calling Jesus a liar, or this parable meaningless. Like, it means nothing. And this is a serious, this is one when I was first starting out as a Christian, I didn't really know. I was already kind of reading and didn't really believe in a pre-trib rapture, but I didn't know about this. And I was on the fence of it. And then when somebody pointed this out to me, somebody who believed in a post-trib rapture, I read this and it really dawned on me. And then it also, proved to me that I can't just take tradition as fact. I can't just listen to what whether it be Methodist or Baptist or whoever, I can't take their tradition and what the majority of people there believe as fact. You have to read the Bible and, pray and seek the Lord for yourself and ask what truth is. Ask Him the truth of these matters. But this right here is a great example, and I never see people talk about the parable of the wheat and the tares. And then he goes on down to explain the parable of the tares. And that's something that, I never see people talk about, and this is one that you can't interpret this any other way because Jesus Himself explained it. So, unless He's lying or He changes His mind, you can't get a pre-trib rapture out of this. He said, "Let them both grow together until the harvest." Why would He change His mind? Why would He say this but then actually do something else? That's double speak, and Anyway, I'm going to move on. This is Mark 13, and there are parallel verses, parallel chapters in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I don't think there's one in John, but it's about the end of the age, about basically the end of the world. And you can read this. It's basically about the end of the age, Armageddon. It starts off, and I believe he goes on to prophesied the temple destruction in some of these, but there's a parallel between all three of those gospels. And you all have a lot of people who teach pre-trib rapture say, well, these don't apply to us, it just applies to the Jews only. And I bring this up, and the reason they say this is because they say, but in those days, because in these verses, verse 24, and this is in the King James Version. I don't know why I had the New King James, but it doesn't matter now. Anyway, in verse 24 he says, but in those days after that tribulation the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. And the stars of the heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And he shall send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. So right here, it's speaking of one point in time after the tribulation, he will gather his elect. Right here, we go back to this parable. He says that there is no two gatherings. There's one gathering. Let them both grow together so you don't accidentally get the wrong person. That's literally what he says, unless you uproot the wheat with them. You don't get the wrong ones. Let them both grow together. And then at the end of the age, he explains, that's when you gather them up. And you actually, if you read it, he says to gather the evil ones up and throw them into the fire first. So they're actually gathered up first before we're even gathered up, if you're going by this parable alone. But right here, they try, a lot of people that believe in a pre-trib rapture want to just discount the Mark 13, and there's a parallel in Matthew, and there's a parallel in Luke, and they try to discount them all. They're basically say the same thing. They're a little bit different. There's some things left out, and there's some more added in. It's probably everything Christ said, but you have to remember there's three different people, remembering, and there's three different accounts. So some are going to remember some, and some aren't. They're going to forget other things. But it's basically the same account. And the reason I bring that up is because at the end of Mark, he says, "And what I say unto you, I say unto all." Watch, because you'll have a lot of people who said that. A lot of people will tell you that this doesn't apply to Christians. When he says elect here, he says elect, and it talks about Christians every other time. But when he says elect here, it's just talking about the Jews. And I don't know how they just want to write in what they want to write into Scripture. They don't want to actually, just take it literally. And go from there. And a lot of it is due to fear, I believe. A lot of people fear going through the tribulation, but we have to remember that everyone in the past has gone through some sort of tribulation. Some people in the past have gone through a lot harder tribulations than what we've ever gone through. I mean, let's take a look at Noah, who had his entire world wiped out. He went through a tribulation, but he was protected going through it. Look at Daniel in the lion's den. He was thrown in the lion's den. He didn't remove him out into outer space or into heaven or wherever and keep him from going through that. He protected him in the lion's den. It's about having faith going through the tribulation. And if you can go, there's tale after tale and story after story of where when God, his elect, his people, his chosen ones, he protects them in the tribulation. He doesn't pull them out. And that's just 99% of the time what God does. That's just his nature, how he does it. All right. I'm going to move on to 1 Thessalonians 4 because I want to talk about some of the ways that the pre-tribulation people will try to confuse you. They will go down here and they'll talk about 1 Thessalonians 4, and they'll also use 1 Corinthians. This is 4 and this is 15. And they will use these verses right here that where Paul was speaking of the rapture, but they'll use it and kind of have this mindset where they'll use this and then act like this is proving that there's a pre-trib rapture. And it never states when this happens. Actually it does state, in a way, if you take Revelation literally in some sense. I know a lot of it is spiritual, but Paul did see, John in Revelation did see literal events happening, and you have to take Revelation somewhat literally. There's some stuff that's a mystery in there that is more spiritual, so it's harder to understand. But a lot of it is literal in Revelation, and I'll get to that in just a second, but I just wanted to go on, and I'm going to start with 1 Thessalonians 4, and just read this to you, and see what idea do you get about when the tribulation happens. So right here, this is verse 17. He says, Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we be with the Lord. What does that have to do with when the tribulation happens? You can go through here, and he's not talking about any of that. He's just stating that there is going to be some sort of rapture, and we all agree on that. Well, I assume most Christians agree on that. There's some probably weird denominations or cults or something that don't, but most Christians agree on that. There is some sort of rapture. But they will use this as and they'll say, well, see, this is proof of the pre-trib rapture, but this doesn't say anything about when this happens. And they'll do the same thing about 1 Corinthians. And 1 Corinthians actually states it's at the last trump, but when you're reading this, 1 Corinthians 15, he's talking about the people who didn't believe in a resurrection. So he goes on and he gets a little bit agitated with them because they didn't believe in a resurrection, and he goes on to say how silly that is. And then he goes on to talk about what that will be like. And he said, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. So he says right here, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So right here, they will use this right here as an example of a pre-trib rapture. But if we're actually going, what is the last trump? If we go into what the trumpets are, in Revelation, there are, what is it? If you read, there are 7 trumpets. So you could say that 1 Corinthians is talking or Paul's talking about the last trumpet, which would lean more towards mid-tribulation, and you could argue that. But it has nothing, like, I don't know how you can say that this 1 Corinthians 1:15, 52 is a argument for a pre-tribulation. I've heard some preachers just pull verses out of everywhere, and then some of them just say, well, it's hidden, it's a hidden secret. And it's just like, the Lord, He doesn't work like that. He has secrets and parables, but if you seek after them with your heart in truth, He will show them to you. He doesn't hide things like just for like some really smart people to know. I mean, He has secrets, but they're very simple. They're not complex that you have to go and find through some mysterious way. It's simple secrets. The simplicity hides it sometimes. The simplicity lends to the secrecy at times because people overlook these types of things. They want something more complex. And anyway, I'm going on about how the Lord works, but I want to move to, okay, this is Revelation 7 now. And this also goes in, and this is what I wanted to talk about. This is Revelation 7, and he goes on, the multitude from the tribulation, and it says, look, after these things I looked up, behold, a great multitude of which no one could count, from every nation and all the tribes, peoples, and languages, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands. And they were crying in a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. Anyway, the angel asked him, and it said all the angels were standing around, and then one of the elders, it said, one of the elders saying to me, these who were answered him, basically, these are the people, these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation. Sorry, I forgot exactly who's answering who here, but these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation. They have washed the robe and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this is the reason they are before the throne of God. They serve him day and night. So right here, it clearly says that there's a multitude who came out of the great tribulation. You'll have a lot of pre-trib people try to say that these are the ones that were raptured up. But if you go back, and do I have it here? No, this is the same thing. Oops, that's a mistake. If you go here to the fifth seal of the martyrs, we can see where these people come from. And it says, when the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw under the altar. We can also see that they weren't raptured up if we read the fifth seal. So it says, when the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been killed because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had maintained. They had been killed. They are martyrs. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood of those who live on the earth? And a white robe was given to each of them, and they were told that they were to rest a little while longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers and sisters who were to be killed, even as they had been, was completed also. So we see this, and then the sixth terror talks about, a great earthquake, and just it says, the great earthquake, the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell and like fig trees, but basically like comets or asteroids hitting the earth, and the sky was split apart like a scroll, and then people hid themselves everyone on earth hid themselves in the rocks, in the mountains. It says this is like part of the tribulation. This is the great terror of the tribulation. This isn't a human-caused thing. This is like an earth reeling and rocking from the blood of the saints being spilled on it type of thing. This is a natural or a disaster type thing. We call them natural disasters, but you know what I mean. Anyway, that happens, and then you go over here, you get the 144,000, which are from Israel, or also could be, it's from the lost tribes, whoever. They could be, they might not even be living in Israel at the time. Some of them might be. I'm not exactly sure about that. It's just people from those tribes. And then the multitude of the tribulation right here. So I don't know where there is a catching away of these people that keep them from going through he says straight up in this that they would be killed as they had been killed. And then you have this happen right here, who come out of the tribulation. So you could say, well, the rapture happens right here, but it doesn't say it. And if you read it in context for what it actually says, it talks about people, there will be martyrs, And then after the martyrs, there will be, because so many people are being martyred during the tribulation, there will be a, the earth will reel and rock. There will be judgment from the earth on the inhabitants. And then we go through, and we're here in the multitude of the tribulation. And it's not the wrath of God, because the wrath of God happens later. A lot of people will use the verse of, we are not appointed to wrath, but the wrath of God is completely different than all of these things. Okay, guys, these are the verses that I have pulled up, and I wanted to use them to kind of prove my point. If you got any questions, ask me below. But yeah, I believe all of these little things, when you start looking at them in context and putting them together, you don't see any sort of way to add in a pre-tribulation, like, rapture. I don't see where it is. If you do, leave, a comment below, but I don't see it. God bless and take care.